Hi, I'm Donald with Steam Bright Supply, and yesterday we talked a little bit about the cleaning pie and how that affects your cleaning performance in your carpet, upholstery, and tile cleaning. And today I want to go over kind of something similar to that, but it's more like if you're in the market for cleaning equipment, how do you kind of narrow down that selection of that equipment, especially if you can't afford the machines that offer the most performance units. And so again, a performance unit on a machine is one that has your cleaning units plus your vacuum units plus the BTUs of heat. And again, to break that down, the cleaning unit formula is the maximum pounds per square inch times the maximum gallons per minute. That equals speed. So your vacuum unit formula is maximum inches of lift at 0 CFM times maximum CFM at 0 inches of lift. And we broke that down yesterday. And also what kind of temperature or BTUs your cleaning package has. But what if you can't have all of it? What is the most important thing to look for, right? If I'm trying to buy a machine, a lot of times I ask people, I go, okay, are you looking for a synergistic package or an all-in-one package? And they're like, I don't even know what a synergistic package is. Well, synergistic means the interaction or cooperation of two or more pieces of equipment to produce a combined effect that is greater than the sum of the separate effects. So, to give you an example, let's say you have um, that's one type of equipment. The other one is an all-in-one, right? So, an all-in-one package is one where the vacuum, the pump, the heating system, your automation features like autofill, auto dump are all under one hood. It's one piece of equipment. A synergistic system is when you have multiple pieces of equipment. For example, if I own a pressure washer, I can go do pressure washing jobs. I can go pressure wash their sidewalk, their deck, their fence, take mold and mildew off their house, right? If I own a flood pumper, I can do water extraction work. I can take that hose inside, pump water out of the basement. I can suck water out of the carpeting from broken pipes or sprinkler system malfunctions from, fire suppression equipment malfunctions. But if I take the hose of the flood pumper and I take the hose of the pressure washer and I join them together, I can still pressure wash and I can still do my water extraction work, but I've also now added carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, tile and grout cleaning, and many other surfaces that require both vacuum and pressure. So the sum of those two pieces of equipment now clean more surface types than they did individually. That's referred to as synergistic. Okay. If you're in the market for equipment, do you want gasoline, electric, or hybrid? Right? So gasoline, naturally, that's kind of self-sufficient. If you want it to be a gasoline-powered system that's creating your vacuum, creating your pressure, and creating your heat and your automation features, do you want it to all be gasoline-powered? All electric systems typically are going to plug into either wall outlets or an electric dryer or electric range outlet. Um, Hybrid is where you're doing a combination. Maybe you have a gasoline pump and a gasoline or like a diesel heating system, but then your vacuum is electric. Or maybe you have an all electric system with a generator on board because you don't want to plug it into the electric dryer outlet. Typically, we find people, if you're under $50,000 a year in revenue, you typically are going to want electric. People that you're using gasoline powered equipment typically do it for the need for speed. They're wanting a system where they don't have to take a few minutes to go plug into one, two, three, four, five, or even six power cords, five outlets to go plug in. Or uh, the other thing that a lot of times I ask people with electric, I go, well, how many power cords are you willing to plug in? And they never really thought about that. And I go, well, power consumption is in direct relation to cleaning efficiency. The more electricity a machine consumes and uses, the more efficient it is. For example, I could literally take any brand of spotting machine, any brand of auto detailing machine, any brand of carpet cleaning machine, any brand of all-in-one tile and grout cleaning machine and calculate what is the wattage and amp draw of each of those machines with a meter, and the one that uses the most electricity is going to clean the fastest, hands down, every time. It's the laws of physics. There's no way that you can have a machine that is using less electricity out clean a machine that uses more electricity. So if you're trying to say, well, I want to just limit it to 2 power cords and I want it to do everything, I have people that go, well, how come I can't get a 1200 psi pump and this great vacuum system and this great heating system and autofill auto dump all under the hood for 2 cords? And I go, well, the laws of physics aren't going to allow that, because you're asking a machine, if you say, well, I'm going to plug into this 20 amp outlet and this 20 amp outlet, okay, I got 40 amps. Those 40 amps of power have to run everything. So if my vacuum system is using 18 amps and my heating system is using 18 amps, well, that's 36. I only got 4 amps left for the pump. And that's if I'm stressing it out, and you're really not supposed to stress out your electrical outlets, because eventually if you're there for hours, they're going to trip and get hot. So naturally, if you can break it up and say, okay, well, I want a cleaning system that uses 3 or 4 cords, that's much easier. In fact, I have people that say, oh, I don't even want to look for a second outlet. I just want a machine that runs on 1 cord. And I go, do you realize how difficult it is? Because a single corded machine that uses 20 amps of power is way more difficult to plug in than a machine that uses 30 amps, and you're locating 2 15 amp outlets, because everybody's got 15 amp outlets. Not everybody's got 20 amp outlets. So finding 2 15 amp outlets is way easier to do than to find a single 20 amp outlet. And again, a machine that's using 30 amps of power is going to out clean a 20 amp machine by 50%. It's going to do every single job you do for the next 10 years 50% faster. So that doesn't make any sense to me. Why wouldn't you just find 2 everyday outlets? Because, when you look at a wall outlet here in the United States, a NEMA 5-15 receptacle, which is the flush numerical code for the outlet in a residential house, it could have 14 gauge wire with a 15 amp breaker going back to the breaker box, or it could have 12 gauge wire on a 20 amp breaker. The receptacle, the NEMA 5-15 flush receptacle, looks exactly the same. You don't have any way of knowing how the builder wired, what gauge wiring he used, and what size breaker is on the building. So a lot of times you might have a machine that operates on either 15 amp or 20 amp outlets, and simply if you found 2 outlets and it tripped a breaker, you would turn the heating system off and reset the breaker and finish the job. Because usually a lot of machines are wired where you might have like 1 vacuum motor on 1 cord, the other vacuum motor on the other cord, and it'll have 2 heaters. It has a heating system on 1 cord and a heating system on the second cord, and then the water pump is on one of those. That's a real common way a lot of the machines are wired. Not all of them, but a lot of them are like that. So another determining factor in narrowing down your equipment search is tank size. Do I want a 1.5 gallon machine that's just a spotter for picking up spots? People that like maybe a machine that's in a furniture store where they have families and kids that are walking around looking at furniture, and they're giving away food and drinks and cookies and whatnot. Well, they need a spotting machine that they go once a week. One employee goes around and picks up the spots. He's not needing a very big tank size. Maybe you have someone that's in the auto detail world, and a 6-gallon machine or a 3-gallon machine would even be sufficient, depending on whether they just primarily do 1 car or they want to do multiple cars. Maybe you want a 9 or 10 or 12-gallon tank size. Some of the machines even go up to 17 gallons of tank size. And that would determine how much time you can have between your stopping and refilling and emptying it out. Another determining factor is what is the maximum hose length that you would like to operate. So the machines that only have, like, say it's got a single 3-stage vac motor in it, can operate 25 feet of hose. If you want to be able to operate longer hose runs and not have the machine constantly follow you, that would be important, right? To be able to have a machine that can have more hose length. What surface types do you want to clean? Do you want to clean tile, carpet, upholstery, do a sewer jetting, or pressure washing? So your water pressure is going to determine that your number of cleaning units. Again, your formula over here is how many pounds per square inch can the machine produce and how many gallons per minute can it produce. When you have a machine that does well in both, it's going to pick up your speed and the pace in which you're going to be able to do the job. So people that do, like, spot cleaning, a lot of times they'll do it at 50 or 100 psi. People that do upholstery cleaning and auto detailing, typically they're going to do those jobs between 100 to 300 psi. The difference there would be if I'm using an open spray tool, I'm going to do 100 psi. If I'm doing a closed spray hand tool, I'm going to do about 200 psi. If I'm doing a bidirectional internal spray tool that cleans both forwards and backwards, then I'm going to typically use 300 to 500 psi on my upholstery and auto detailing. But if I'm going to do carpet cleaning, I'm going to typically be 300 to 600 psi. If I'm doing tile and grout cleaning, I can do tile if I use at 500, but that's going to be a smaller tool. Um, at 500 has to be typically under 5 inches wide, but most people like using 12-inch spinners, and you need 1200 psi to do that. Or if you're going to use a 15-inch spinner tool with vacuum recovery, you need 1500 psi. um, Sewer jetting is typically done around 1200 to 1500 psi, and pressure washing is over 2000, and typically your gallons per minute. So the difference also, your GPM rate changes a lot because people do carpet cleaning at about 1 gallon a minute, where people do pressure washing typically closer to 3 gallons a minute. So your pump's got to be quite a bit larger to do 2000 psi at, at least 2.5 to 3 gallons a minute, and they can even go up to 4000 or 5000 psi. Another thing to look at is, are you going to do, how heavy do you want your machine to be? Does that machine, if you're going to lift it in and out of the truck yourself, or you're going to use a ramp, or you're going to team lift it? Usually the maximum weight that one person can have for getting the machine in and out of the truck by themselves is 150 pounds. So you say, well, I want an all-in-one machine, and I don't want to buy a ramp, and I'm not going to have anybody with me, then your maximum weight lifted is 150. You're not going to be able to get it out of the service truck if you get something heavier than that. That may be a huge determining factor of why a lot of people like synergistic equipment. Because if you want a really aggressive vacuum and a really aggressive pump, and you stick those two pieces of equipment under the hood of a single piece of equipment, it's not uncommon for it to weigh 200 pounds. Where if I take and separate it, and I get a flood pumper that weighs 100 pounds, and I get a pressure washer that weighs 75 to 100 pounds, now I have two pieces of equipment that I can easily take out of the truck by myself or load it by myself, and it gives me better performance results than if I looked at my performance units combined of the all-in-one system. So do you want to, do you need a machine that has stair climbing capabilities? That would be another part of that aspect. Um, there are machines, for example, the Hydromaster PEX 500, they designed all the weight over the rear axle and the tanks over the front. That machine goes up and down stairs very easily. It's not a very strong machine, but if you're just primarily doing multi-leveled apartment complexes, it works great. Um, if you have a machine where it has the water pump and the vacuum system more frontally and down low out front, then when you try to lean it back, all that weight's out in the front, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to go up and down stairs. Again, another advantage to synergistic equipment. If you separate your pump and vacuum or heating system separately, then a lot of times it's a lot easier to go up and down the stairs. Do you want to be able to use 2-inch vacuum hose or 1.5-inch vacuum hose? Well, the maximum amount of cubic feet per minute that can pass through a 1.5-inch inside diameter hose is about 225 cubic feet per minute, CFM. If you have 2-inch inside diameter hose, you can do about 450 cubic feet per minute. A lot of times, people will use a combination if they want to get some really maximum hose length, because think about it, if I had the restriction of the wall of the hose, okay, when I get it smaller, it's much harder for it to pass through it. So for example, if I took a sonic shake and I put it on the floor and I had a 5-foot straw and the straw was really skinny, I would have a difficult time tasting that shake. But if I had a really fat straw, I could suck it up and taste it more easily. So when you have a larger diameter, it's less friction against what you're trying to pass it through. A lot of times people will do a combination. Maximum hose length, the majority of it will be 2 inches, and then the part by the wand, maybe the last 15 to 25 feet, they narrow it down to 1.5 inches. That's okay to do because you can squeeze the air molecules up to 75 feet, but you can't do it past that. Well, let me explain what I'm talking about. If you look at an air compressor, if you have a shop air compressor, let's say it's a 30-gallon air compressor and it holds 30 gallons of air, that air compressor can run and fill up multiple times. You can squeeze the air in it. It's kind of like the same thing, like let's say I took a 2-gallon pump-up sprayer, I put a gallon of water in it, and then I pump it up. Okay, it started out with a gallon of air and a gallon of water. Well, when I reach 45 PSI, I still have a gallon of water in it. It hasn't really squeezed it. It hasn't squeezed it to the point it's shaped, but the air did squeeze. I can actually fill that up 2 or 3 times. That 1 gallon of air is now in there. So that quality of air can be compressed a lot easier than the liquid. Just like you can squeeze air, you can stretch it. So, give you an example. If you take a monster mount truck mount, like a 55, 60 horsepower, some of the largest carpet cleaning rigs that have ever been built, and you stick a 1.5-inch hose on it, that machine that can normally do 3, 4, 500 feet of 2-inch hose, if I put all 1.5-inch hose, what is it going to do? We ran that experiment. We wanted to find out. We had a 55 horsepower Ford truck mount here, and we put 75 feet of hose on it, 100, 125, 150. And I have to tell you, when it dropped it, when you got to 75 feet, the performance of it just tanked off dramatically. Once you got past 125 feet, it was like useless. It really was nowhere near having the ability to gulp that 500 CFM that originally it was designed to do. It was all leaking through the vacuum relief valve on the tank. So as we were restricting the airflow more, it's kind of like the same thing that happens. You put your wand down on the floor. It's kind of partial occlusion, and that looks for that air. It's being gulped. It's like it needs that 500 CFM. It's got to get it somewhere. If you can't get it from the hose, it opens up the vacuum relief valve on the tank. So not all portables have the ability to run 2-inch or 1.5-inch inside diameter hose. So that may be an important factor. If you want to have the ability to go past 75 feet, you would need a machine that has that 2-inch ability, because no machine, regardless of how much vacuum is advertised in both CFM and inches of lift, if you're putting all 1.5-inch hose, it's not really going to work over 75 feet. How much water pressure do you want, or gallons per minute? Well, that has a lot to do with the surface types. So I just kind of want to talk about the evolution of the auto detailer here. So I have a lot of times where people, they go, "Oh, I'm just going to get in the auto detail world." And I was like, "Okay, well, you can get a 55 psi machine, or if you want something to clean twice as fast, you can get 100 or 120 psi, or if you want to clean twice as fast as that one, you can get 300 psi with a bidirectional internal spray hand tool."